After a gladiator killed his third opponent, after the crowd screamed his name and the emperor gave the signal, he didn't receive gold coins or a laurel wreath. He received a woman, dragged from the holding cells, chained at the wrists, a prisoner of war with no name in the official records, just an entry in a ledger. One Dacian female, approximately 20 years, transferred for Victoria Carnalis. This wasn't random violence, this was policy. Rome's official system for rewarding its arena champions with access to captive women. And it was documented, meticulously, by the empire's own historians. For 2,000 years, scholars sanitized this truth. They called it practices of the era. They turned systematic abuse into cultural footnotes. They made horror sound like ancient custom we shouldn't judge. But the Roman records themselves tell a different story. Juvenal wrote about it in his satires. Suetonius documented it in imperial chronicles. Martial described it in his epigrams without censoring a word. What you're about to discover is what those historians actually recorded, not Hollywood's version of Gladiators, not the noble warrior myth, but the machinery Rome built to turn female prisoners into human trophies, and how an entire empire convinced itself this was normal. When a gladiator won his bout, the editor, the game's organizer, would present him with options for his reward: money, wine, a night in better quarters, or Victoria Carnalis, carnal victory. The term appears repeatedly in Roman administrative documents. Suetonius defines it clearly in the Lives of the 12 Caesars, the right of a victorious gladiator to select a female captive for the night. These weren't prostitutes, they were prisoners of war. Women captured during Rome's military campaigns across Dacia, Gaul, Germania, Britannia. They had no legal rights under Roman law, no ability to refuse, no protection whatsoever, and providing them as rewards cost the imperial treasury nothing. They were already property of the state. The system operated with chilling efficiency. After a victory, the master of games would escort the gladiator down into the hippodrome, the maze of tunnels and cells beneath the arena floor. According to Martial's epigrams, the gladiator would be shown a bronze tablet listing available captives by age and origin. He would choose. A clerk would record the transaction. Guards would unlock the chains. Archaeological evidence from amphitheaters across the empire reveals the physical reality of this system. Excavations have uncovered small chambers off the main tunnel network, rooms measuring barely 8 by 10 feet with stone benches built into walls, iron rings for restraints, and doors that locked from the outside. These weren't storage spaces. They were purpose-built reward chambers, as much a part of arena architecture as the gladiator tunnels or animal lifts. Administrative tablets from Pompeii contain standardized forms for these transactions, hereby granted to gladiator for meritorious combat. Choice of captiva, duration not to exceed 1 night, to be returned to holding by dawn. Returned, like borrowed equipment, human beings processed with the efficiency of a grain shipment. But Victoria Carnalis served a purpose beyond rewarding fighters. It was psychological warfare. Cassius Dio describes Rome's strategy clearly. Military conquest wasn't enough. The empire needed to break the spirit of conquered peoples completely. And what better way than to take the daughters and wives of defeated warriors and give them to slaves as entertainment prizes? After Trajan conquered Dacia in 106 AD, thousands of prisoners were brought to Rome. Among them were women from Dacian nobility, daughters of chieftains, wives of warriors who had resisted Roman rule. During Trajan's 123 days of victory games, these women were systematically distributed as gladiator rewards. The message was clear: resist Rome, and your women become our property. But what happened in those private chambers was only half the story, because when female prisoners appeared in the arena itself, they faced something far worse than what happened underground. They faced public execution dressed up as religious theater. Roman authorities discovered they could transform brutal killings into mythological performances. A woman might be forced to play Pasiphae and face a bull. Another would be cast as Dirce, tied to the horns of a maddened animal and dragged across the sand while thousands cheered. These weren't metaphorical reenactments. The deaths were real. The woman playing Dirce would be bound with specially woven nets designed not to break quickly, ensuring the crowd witnessed every moment of her being gored and trampled. The bestiari, animal handlers who orchestrated these executions, were specialists in choreographed death. They starved lions for days. They agitated bulls with sharp prods. They sometimes smeared condemned women with animal scents to guarantee violent attacks. These spectacles occurred during the Ludi Meridiani, the midday intermission between gladiator matches. While the crowd ate lunch and drank wine, they watched women torn apart by dogs, shot by archers using them for target practice, or mauled by beasts in mythological tableaux. The executions weren't private like Victoria Carnalis. They were public demonstrations of what happened to those who defied Rome. Christian women became special targets. Perpetua and Felicity, executed in Carthage in 203 CE, were forced to dress as priestesses of Ceres, a mockery of their faith, before being driven into the arena to face a mad cow specifically chosen because they were female. What made both systems, the private rewards and public executions, truly chilling was how organized they were. Roman arena managers maintained detailed inventories of captive women, age, origin, physical condition, all cataloged. These administrators worked directly with military commanders who supplied prisoners from active conquest zones. The logistics were remarkable. Women captured on battlefields in Germania would be transported across the empire, processed through military camps, cataloged, and delivered to arena-holding facilities. Cassius Dio even mentions supply shortages during years without major military campaigns. When conquests slowed, the availability of captives decreased. Think about that. The empire's entertainment infrastructure depended on a steady supply of conquered women. But this machinery required more than just prisoners and gladiators. It required an entire society to accept it as normal. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, attended these games and wrote something revealing. He sat among Roman citizens, fathers with their sons, mothers with daughters, watching these spectacles, and nobody objected. And why? Because Roman society operated on dignitas, social honor. Publicly questioning imperial practices meant challenging Rome's right to rule, which meant losing your social standing. Social death. Tacitus records what happened to those who spoke up. A senator named Marcus Valerius questioned whether certain arena practices aligned with Roman virtue. Within a month, he was accused of treason, his family stripped of property, and he died in exile. The message was clear: watch in silence or pay the price. The system trapped everyone. Gladiators were slaves with no choice. Prisoners had no rights, and citizens were complicit witnesses too afraid to object. Occasionally, even Rome went too far for its own people. Cassius Dio documents an incident under Emperor Commodus in 192 AD. Commodus expanded Victoria Carnalis beyond war captives. He began using daughters of Roman citizens, political enemies he wanted to humiliate. One victim was the daughter of Senator Quintus Pompeius. When guards came for her, her father blocked the door. They killed him on the spot and took her anyway. That night, Rome's elite began plotting Commodus's assassination. Not because of general tyranny, they'd tolerated that for years, but because he'd crossed the line between them and conquered foreigners. The assassination succeeded on December 31st, 192 AD. But the system itself? It continued for another 200 years. The last recorded arena executions occurred in 523 CE. So why does this matter 2 millennia later? Because Rome wasn't uniquely evil. Many civilizations practiced slavery and executed prisoners. But Rome was uniquely efficient at institutionalizing brutality, at building systems around horror, at making suffering routine through bureaucracy. They didn't just commit atrocities, they created infrastructure for them: supply chains, administrative forms, standardized procedures. The philosopher Hannah Arendt coined the phrase "the banality of evil" in the 20th century. But she could have been describing Rome, when clerks process human suffering like inventory, when citizens watch horror without objecting, when societies build systems that make cruelty normal. That's when evil becomes invisible. The Romans who attended these games didn't see themselves as monsters. They saw themselves as patriots. The gladiators who accepted these rewards saw themselves as powerless men grabbing brief moments of power. The historians who documented it all saw themselves as objective observers. Everyone had justifications. Everyone had reasons. The lesson isn't that Rome was uniquely evil. The lesson is that systems can normalize anything. That bureaucracy can make horror routine. That entire civilizations can become complicit while believing themselves innocent. The Colosseum still stands. Tourists take photos. Guides tell stories of brave gladiators and epic combat. But beneath that sand in those underground chambers, history tells a different story. About Victoria Carnalis. About reward chambers with iron rings in the walls. About administrative ledgers that cataloged human beings like livestock. About an empire that turned suffering into policy and convinced itself it was civilization. Power without limits doesn't just corrupt. It creates systems, it builds infrastructure for cruelty. It makes horror so routine that entire societies stop seeing it. Rome conquered the known world, but it never conquered its own capacity for normalized brutality. This is what Roman historians actually recorded. Not the myth, not the sanitized version. The truth they documented in their own words, and the machinery of suffering they built to last 5 centuries. This is history without filters.